Baruchim habaim. So we're going to do like we decided last time. We're going to divide the lesson into three. The first part will be the Hebrew of the weekly Torah portion. And the second part will be Kriyat Shema, the laws pertaining to reciting the Shema. And then the third part will be Hilchot De'ot. It talks about basically the most essential part of the Torah, which is how we serve God by being kind to fellow man. And I decided this week we'll start something new. I'll send this in our WhatsApp group in English for you. But this is something that is traditionally said when we enter into a Beit Midrash. And if you don't have this text, you don't have it memorized or something, that's not a big deal. You can say something similar in your own words, but I'm going to say it in Hebrew, then in English, and then we'll begin. Because it's really a good thing to pray before we go. יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהי, שלא אכשל בדבר הלכה, שלא אומר על טומא טהור, ועל טהור טמא, ועל מותר אסור, ועל אסור מותר, ועל אכשל בדבר הלכה, וישמחו בי חברי, ועל יכשלו חברי בדבר הלכה, ואשמח בהם. It says, may it be your will, Adonai our God, that I will not stumble in a matter of halakha, of Jewish law, that I won't say regarding something that is impure, that it's pure, and that I won't say regarding something that's pure, that it's impure, and that I won't say that something is that's permitted is forbidden, and that I will not say that what's forbidden is permitted, and I will not stumble in halakha. And all my fellow men will rejoice with me, they'll be happy for me, and will not stumble. They too will not stumble in a matter of halakha, and I will rejoice for them. All right, so let's begin. So this week's parasha is etchanan. It's Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 23. This is just the first aliyah, so it concludes in chapter 7, verse 11. So let's begin. Everybody repeat after me. Va et hanan. Va'et hanan.
Hanan.
Right. Va'et hanan. El.
El.
Adonai.
Adonai.
Ba'et.
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 All right. And if we have an ayin, we really want to hear that separation between the and the e. So if we can, not just et, but ba'et, we really want to hear it. Ba'et. So let's do it again. Od pa'am. Again. Ba'et.
Ba'et.
Beautiful. Ha-hi.
Ha-hi.
Okay, and this is an example where the vowels are not matching the letters. There's a few places in the Torah where that happens, and that's because there are two traditions, the written tradition and the oral tradition. And so the vowels are telling us what the oral tradition is. And it might have originated from there being more than one way that the word was written in some ancient copies of the Torah. So they're trying to preserve both traditions. But this usually happens in words that it doesn't change the meaning much. For example, this verse says, and I pleaded to God, to Hashem, at the time, that. So that means at that time. So this word, if we ignore the vowels, it says ha-hu, which means at that time in the masculine form, and the vowels say ha-hi, which would be this in the feminine form. But both of them mean this. So it doesn't change the meaning in any substantial way. All right, lemor. Lemor.
Lemor.
All right, we're going to say the whole thing together one more time. Va'etchanan
etchanan
el Adonai
ba'et
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 hahi lemor.
lemor.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, who wants to read it all by themselves, the whole verse? Because it's a short verse. Any volunteers?
Yes, Rabbi.
Yes, sir. Please, b'chavod. Go ahead, b'chavod.
So, what to do?
Just read this one verse all by yourself and take your time. I have very high expectations for you, Mr.
Can I read?
Absolutely. B'chavod,
Okay,
go
okay.
ahead.
Okay.
This is Mr. Yosef, right? I didn't see your name, but I think I know the voice.
etchanan el Adonai be'et ha-Hu lemor.
All right. That was beautiful, but the vowels tricked you right here. The vowels tricked you. So the letters are hahu, which is what you correctly said, but the vowels are the vowels for hahi. So when we see a contradiction in a word between the vowel and the way it's written, you want to go with the vowels.
etchanan el Adonai ba'et hahi lemor.
Exactly, exactly. All right, kol hakavod. Pasuk haba, next
Rabbi,
pasuk. Yes, sir.
Rabbi, one more thing I want to ask.
Sure.
When we read etchanan or etchanan.
Okay. If you are not able to pronounce the letter het properly, and I think you can. It's Yosef speaking, right? Let me see. I'm not sure. You are Yosef, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you are able to pronounce het properly, and I think you do if I remember correctly, then you should pronounce het properly. So het is properly not a cha, like the letter chaf, right? Most Jews pronounce the letter het, which is this letter, and the letter chaf, if we can find it, here's a chaf. They pronounce these two letters the same exact way, most Jews. So if you have difficulty pronouncing het properly, do it just like everybody else. You can pronounce them the same. But if you're able to pronounce it properly, different from chaf, then you should do so. So the proper way in ancient Hebrew would be wa'etchanan. Wa'etchanan. So the het would be ha. It's more like an H. Etchanan. But if that's difficult, then you can just say ve'etchanan. That's totally fine. There's not only one way or nothing, you know. All right. Mi haba. Who's next? All right. Well, we'll go ahead and read this next pasuk. Verse. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Adonai ata.
All right. Hold on. Hold on. You're reading great. But this parasha is giving us a lot of tricks. Okay. You read this as Adonai, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When we see this, we should always read it as Adonai, which you did. But this one's tricky. Why? Why is it tricky? Because Adonai came right before it also, right? So if Adonai comes before the holiest name of God, then we read this as Elohim.
Okay.
And if you look, we have the vowels of Elohim, right? So that's the hint. These are the vowels of Elohim. Usually it's the vowels of Adonai.
Adonai Elohim ata hahilota.
Beautiful. You can continue if you'd like. That's great reading.
להראות את עבדך, את גדלך.
Beautiful.
Gadlacha.
Gadlacha.
גדלך. ואת ידך החזקך.
All right.
Last ha చెప్పాల్సిన పని లేదు.
החזקה.
Beautiful.
Zach.
If you guys struggled with the word, feel free to repeat it again. That's a thing to do. Ha-Shavua.
החזקה.
Right?
אשר מאל בשמיים וארץ אשר יעשה.
All right. If the dot is on the
Sa
left.
sa.
All right. Let's just for the sake of
Yes.
order, just for the sake to keep order. If someone's reading, then let's only leave the corrections up to me, okay? Unless it's like in person or something, you can do whatever. She can be your victim in person, but online, let's just have one person doing the correction. It'll help keep it clear for the audio recording. Okay, so you're doing great reading, beautiful reading. And I'm actually pretty impressed. I just want to, so my corrections are going to be different for different people, depending on what your level is. All right, so because you're reading so well, I'm going to be a little more tough on you. And you let me know if it's too much, okay? So here, I think you read it, uvarets, which is, all right, and that's clear enough that everyone will understand you in Israel. If you spoke Hebrew in Israel, they'd understand you. But if you want to be extra clear, try not to join this vowel, the of the vet, with the of the aleph. You don't want to make them like one. You don't want to say uvarets. You want to say uva-arets. Like we should hear them separately. U-va-a, va-a, uva-aret. Did that make sense? So instead of uvarets, we want to say uva-arets. Hear every syllable clearly. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it again. Continue. Hello?
చదవాలా?
చదువు.
చదవండి. Continue.
ఉవారెజ్ అషర్ యాసే.
Perfect.
కెమాషేఖా.
Hold on.
కెమాషేఖా.
All right, which side of this scene, sheen?
కెమాషేఖా.
Secha.
Secha. కెమాషేఖా.
Ma'asecha. Ma'asecha. One more time. Ma'asecha.
కెమాషేఖా.
You got it. Do it one more time. Ma'asecha.
కెమాషేఖా.
That's it.
వెకిగురోతెఖా.
Okay. So the same way this is a cha, this also right here is a chi.
Vechig.
Good. Vechig vurotecha. Vechig vurotecha. Otpam, again.
కెమాషేఖా. వెకిగురోతెఖా.
All right. So can you tell me, this is a question. We're doing a little test. How do you know if this letter right here, the kaf, how do you know if it's a ka, like the word cat, or a cha, like cha? How do you know the difference when you're reading?
రాదుగా.
Can someone tell us, how do we know when this letter chaf should be pronounced cha and when it should be pronounced ka. It has two
Ka.
different sounds.
పైన
Ka.
చుక్క పెడితే ఖ మామూలు ఖ లాగా వలకాలి. మామూలుగా రాస్తే ఖ అది చెప్పు.
ఎక్కడ పైన చుక్క పెడతావు హాఫ్ కి
ఖకి ఒకసారి చెప్పారు. పైన చుక్క వస్తే దాన్ని మామూలుగానే చదవచ్చు అని చెప్పారు.
if we keep a dot on the top then we pronounce like kite.
Okay, if there's a dot inside of it, in the middle of it.
మిడిల్
Yeah, in the middle of it. Kind of like this.
Abba.
Kind of like that.
మిడిల్ మర్చిపోయా పైన.
Right? So if there's a dot in the middle of it, it's going to be like a K sound in the word cat. And if there's no dot in the middle of it, it's going to be like a sound. The most beautiful sound in the Hebrew language.
అంటే ఇప్పుడు
That was a
మధ్యలో
joke.
మీ కోల్ అని వచ్చింది అప్పుడు అంతేగా.
Okay. Let's do one more pasuk. All right, everybody, let's say it together. Er. Who can say this? Who can say er?
Yeah. Oh.
Not just it's would only be the aleph, but we also have an ayin. So it's not just it's er. 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 Like you're going to throw up, like you're sick. Er.
Double A.
Eb.
Erb. Erb.
Eb.
Erbera. Erbera. Erbera.
Ebra.
You guys got it. Very good. Anytime you see the letter ayin, it should make some kind of a sound. Ayin's not really silent. Erbera. Na.
Eber. Na.
Ve. Er. E.
Et. Yeah. Yeah.
E.
Ve.
Er.
Er. E. Ve. Er. E.
Yeah.
Et.
Et. Ha-aret.
Aret. Aret.
Aret.
All right, and like we said earlier, it's very easy to fuse the two vowels together and accidentally say haaretz, right? We don't want to do that. Haaretz would be like 2 syllables, but it's 3 syllables. Ha-aretz.
Ha-aret.
Nachon, correct. Ha-tova.
Atova.
Ha-tova.
Wa.
All right. Asher.
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 Be'ever. Be'ever.
Be'eder.
Ever. V as in very. Be'ever.
Be'ever.
All right. Ha-yarden. Ha-yarden.
Then.
Ha-har.
Har.
Ha-har.
Har.
Har.
Ho.
Ha-tov.
To.
Hato.
Nachon. Very good. Nachon. Nachon means correct, by the way. Nachon, correct. Ha-zeh.
Zeh.
Ha-zeh.
Zeh.
Hazeh.
Ve. Halle. Ve.
Wa.
Halle. Vanon.
No. Ve halvano.
Nachon. Correct. Ve. Halle. Vanon. Ve. Halle. Vanon.
Mehaleva non.
Nachon. Correct. Yafe me'od. Very nice. All right. Who wants to read this pasuk? If you want, you can just do half of it. Your choice. And we have this beautiful beginning, which sounds like throwing up, vomiting. Er.
Ebra. Na.
Ebra.
E'bera. E'bera.
Abera. Abera.
Ebra. Na.
Nachon. I'beranna.
Vere.
Ve'er'eh. Er'eh.
E.
Right? If we see the shva, the two dots on top of each other under a letter, that means the next syllable, it's completely separate vowel sound. Ve'er-eh. We need to hear it separately. Ve'er-eh.
Ve'er.
All right?
Yes. Ha-aretz. Ha-Tova. Asher.
Good, good.
Be'ever.
Be'ever. Be'ever.
Be'ever.
How do we know it's
Be'ever.
be'ever? Because there's a symbol underneath it. Anytime you see the cantillation marks, the Hebrew musical notes, that gives you a hint as to which part of the word to accent, to accentuate, to emphasize. So if this little, it looks like an L, a backwards L. If that L were under the vet, then you would say be'ever, but it's under the ein, so we say be'ever.
Be'ever.
Got it.
Ve'er.
Be'ever.
Hayarden.
Hayarden.
Hayarden. Hahar. Hato. Hazze. Vehalvano.
Behalle. Behalle vanon.
Vehalvano.
Beautiful, beautiful. You guys did amazingly today. I'm super impressed. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of translating.
Okay.
Only looking for the most common words. All right. Etchanan el Adonai ba'ethahi lemor. All right. Who can tell us what this word means? It's a trick question. We had it last week, so think about it. If it were easy, I would not ask.
One L is Hashem.
Good. So there's more than one kind of the word El in Hebrew.
Mm.
So this is El. And you said that there's an El that means Hashem, that means God.
Mm.
And then there's an El that means something else. And they're both pretty common. So who can tell us what this is?
Good God. రెండు మీనింగ్లు చెప్పారు.
And then there's another word El that does not mean God.
God. God.
Toward.
Not.
Very good. Toward. To or toward. Like I'm going to my house. I'm going toward my house. Going toward home. I'm walking toward the man.
Two.
To.
To
So
for.
this is to
To.
or toward.
Yes.
Good.
This is two.
For.
And they did not even translate it because you don't have to say to here. You could say I entreated to the Lord or I pleaded to the Lord. But you could also in English just get rid of it and just say I begged the Lord. But in Hebrew, you're going to say this word to. I begged to the Lord. Okay, who can tell us how we know when it's to or toward and how we know when it's God? What's the difference?
If the three dots is on the under the aleph, that is two, and two dots, that is Hashem.
Beautiful, perfect. Two dots refers to God. Three dots means to or toward. Yefeh. Very good. All right. Let's see. Remind us, who can tell us, how do you pronounce the holy forename of God when it comes right after the word Adonai? Normally we read the
Elohim.
four-letter name as, normally we read the four-letter name as Adonai. Here, we're not going to
Elohim.
say Adonai twice.
Elohim.
Go ahead. Nachon, nachon, correct. Okay, who can tell us how you say correct in Hebrew?
Please repeat it.
Yeah, who can tell us how to say correct, correcto in English?
Nachon. Nachon.
Nachon, very good. Nachon. All right, when you guys are studying together, I want you to try to use these words because it'll help you remember. All right. Who can tell us what ato means? Ato.
You.
Very good. Is this male you or female you?
Here is male you.
Nachon. So ata is a male you, and at would be female. At and ata. All right, let's see. This word's kind of common. Yad. Who can tell us what yad?
Yad mean hand.
Very good. Like in the blessing before we wash our hands. Well, many people say it after they wash their hands. Al natilat yadayim.
Dying.
Right? So yadayim means two hands. Right? Yad is one hand. So yad is hand. Who can tell us what this cha here means? Yad cha.
Yeah, the cha. Yeah.
What is this cha doing attached to the yad, attached to the hand?
Why it attached to the hand?
Yeah, why is cha attached to yad? We have it in many places. Avde,
Yeah.
avde, cha. Gadale, cha.
Lecha.
Yad, cha. It's all over the place. Who can tell us what this means?
I don't know.
That's one answer.
Rabbi, can I?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So when we say yadcha, it means your hand. So
Good.
whenever cha ending with cha, it means yours.
Okay, good. And that's only when cha is added to a noun, right? A noun is a person, place, or a thing. So yad, it's a hand. That's a person, place, or thing. That's a noun, right? Because a hand is a thing. So you add cha to it, and it means your hand. If cha is added to a verb, to an action, a word that talks about an action, then it doesn't mean your, it would mean you, that the action was done to you. Like ohevcha. If I say ani ohevcha, I'm saying I love you instead of your. Right? That's because love is an action. Ohevcha, I love you. But if I say ani ohev bitcha, I love your daughter, then cha means your, because daughter is not an action, it's a person. Right? So cha ending, it can mean you or your, and it depends on whether it's attached to a action word or a noun word. All right. Who can repeat to us what we just said? Someone who did not know before. What does cha do attached to a word? Please, some volunteer. It's okay to make a mistake. Don't be afraid. What does cha do when it's added to a word? Cha means you or your.
You were.
Okay. So when cha is added to a noun, it means your, like hand, yad, cha, your hand. If it's added to a verb, which is a word that does an action, like love, ohev means loving, the action of it. So if you add cha to the action love, so you'd say ohev cha, then it means
Yours hand.
good. So if cha is added to a noun, an object, then it means your. If it's added to a verb, an action, it means you. All right. Let's do two more. Who can tell us what this means?
Hashem.
Hashem, God.
Good. El. Now, El most definitely does refer to Hashem, but we need to know, it's important to know that El does not mean Hashem, right? El can also be applied to things that are not Hashem. El really just means force or a power, something that has a lot of power and force. So sometimes it's applied to false gods, things that are not Hashem. There's even some places where it talks, where it refers to mountains, like the mighty mountains, the mountains that are intimidating, like the Himalayas, the Himalaya mountains. Sometimes it's used as a description. So normally it's translated as God in English, but God is not a perfect translation because El doesn't really mean creator. It just means something that has a lot of might or power. Okay. One more word. Shomayim. Shomayim. Who can tell us what Shomayim means?
Shamayim. Shama. Shama.
Mayim. Shomayim. These two.
క్షమ అంటే విను.
Venu. Shamayim ante.
These two words, Shomayim and Aretz, often come together. Shomayim, Aretz. So Aretz means earth,
Aretz means earth.
earth or land.
Shamayim means heavens.
Yes.
Shamayim
So
means heavens.
heavens and earth.
Yeah.
Shomayim va'aretz.
Shamayim eretz.
Oh, okay. So let's go on to the laws of Shema now. Oh, nice and big. Okay. So last week we stopped at the laws of Shema, 2nd chapter, the 6th law. And we were learning about that you can recite the Shema whether you're standing or sitting or walking. You can fulfill the obligation to recite Shema in any position, but we should not recite Shema laying on our back or on our belly because that's not very respectful. Okay, who wants to read the first halakha for today? Halakha number 7 in chapter 2. We need a volunteer. Any volunteer?
Okay, I will try.
Okay.
A person who immerses in a ritual bath and is able to come up and dress before sunrise should do so. And then recite the Shema. If he is afraid that perhaps the sun will rise before he can recite the Shema, he should cover himself with the water in which he stands and recite the Shema.
Okay, so this is one of several halachot, several laws that teach us that even though we learned earlier that you can fulfill the obligation to recite Shema even after sunrise in the morning, it's praiseworthy. It's really ideal if you're able to say Shema right before the sun rises. That's the ideal time. So this is a common theme, a common idea in the Jewish faith. To do God's commandments, it's not all or nothing. You don't do either everything or nothing. You don't do either everything perfectly or don't do it at all. There are levels. So yes, we should recite Shema. And if you're able to, if you have the strength to, it's best to say Shema before sunrise, right before sunrise, not super early and not after. But if that's too difficult for you, then you should still say Shema. Say it after sunrise, right? Okay, let's keep on going.
Which he stands and recite the Shema. He should not cover himself with putrid water that has an putrid water
means very stinky.
That has an unpleasant odor, or with water that has been used for soaking flax or with water so clean that his nakedness is visible. However, he may cover himself with murky water that has no unpleasant odor and recite the Shema where he is.
Okay. Now this is not ideal. It's just if he wants to say Shema before sun rises, which is the best time to say it, and he happens to be immersing, like in a mikveh, in a mikvah, for ritual reasons. Okay, halakha number 8.
While reciting the Shema, one should not gesture with his eyes or lips or point with his fingers in order that his reading not be haphazard. If one were to do this, although he does fulfill his obligation, he has acted improperly.
Okay, so this one is an important one to remember because I see people break this halakha a lot in synagogues. In a lot of synagogues, people sit around the walls. So it's almost like they make a circle inside the synagogue and all the men are sitting along the walls. And sometimes while they're reciting Shema, because we say it so much, a lot of people know it by memory. And so sometimes you will see people like smiling at each other and winking, just kind of being funny, which is okay to do, but you don't want to do it while you're saying Shema. It's not proper, it's not respectful, and it can make us mess up, you know, make a mistake while reading. All right, next chapter. I'm sorry, next paragraph.
One should recite the Shema so that his words are audible to himself. However, even if he does not do this, he fulfills his obligation. One must enunciate.
Yeah, enunciate means to correctly pronounce, clearly, to clearly pronounce.
One must enunciate that letters clearly.
All right. So,
However,
for example, instead of saying "baretz" for in the land, instead of saying "baretz," we would say "ba'aretz." Ba'aretz. Hear every part of the word.
However, even if he does not do this, he fulfills his obligation.
All right, and this also is a halakha that a lot of people need to work on. And I made a video kind of about this earlier this week, I think the day before yesterday. There are a lot of Jews who they pray regularly, but sometimes they might miss the prayers because they're in a rush to get to work, or there's like an appointment or an emergency. They got to get their children to school. So sometimes they might not have time to sit with a book in front of them and recite the Shema. Now, if you usually recite Shema quietly and not audibly, you're still fulfilling your obligation, but it makes it harder to memorize the Shema. So if when you're saying it, you say it clearly out loud so that you can hear yourself, that makes it a lot easier to memorize it. And you don't have to force yourself to memorize it. If you just do it out loud so that you can hear yourself every day when you say it, just twice a day, you're going to automatically memorize it. And then if you have it memorized, you can say Shema even when you're in a rush, even when you're driving, or even when you're riding in a taxi. Even if you don't have the Siddur in front of you, you'll already know it. So you can still fulfill the obligation even though you don't have a prayer book. All right, halakha 9. Mi haba, who's next? Mi haba. Anybody want to read? Hello, hello.
ఏంటి ఎవరు చదవరు? చదవండి.
బుల్లిది లేదా?
ఏం మరి? రోజలింజీ, యూసఫ్ బాయ్.
Okay, I'm going to begin reading. Halakha number 9.
Can I?
9.
I can read.
బుల్లిది.
Okay, please go ahead.
How must one enunciate?
We can't hear you very well. If you can get closer to the computer.
How must one enunciate? He must be careful not to pronounce a letter with a strong Dagesh, as if there were no Dagesh, or a letter with no Dagesh, as if there were one. Nor should one pronounce the silent Shava or silence the pronounced Shava.
Okay,
Therefore,
let's look at this, because this is a pretty important halakha. And also, just like the previous one, this is a halakha that most people do not do. All right? So enunciate. What did we say enunciate means?
Yeah, enunciate, spelling.
So enunciate means to pronounce
Read loud.
clearly, right? To be very accurate in the way we speak. So instead of, in English, one of the ways you can say I want to do something is I want to do something, right? Many Americans, they don't say I want to eat, they say I want to eat. So that's the opposite of enunciating. If I say I wanna, I'm not enunciating the word. I'm just kind of blurring it. I'm mixing the words. Want to, I'm making them one into one word, wanna. So enunciate means to do the opposite of that. Enunciate means to say I want to instead of I wanna. All right. It says be careful to not pronounce a letter with a strong dagesh as if there's no dagesh. What is a dagesh? A dagesh is this little dot you see inside of this pe, or like the dot you see inside of this tav, or inside of this yud. These are called dagesh. Now this word yar pe, this letter pe, we know it's a p sound because there's a dot in it. If we ignore that dot and act like it's not there, then the p sound becomes an f sound. So instead of yarpe, it would be yarfe. And that's what this halakha is saying. Make sure you're not changing the pronunciation of the letters from pa to fa, from tha to ta, from ka to cha, which we talked about earlier when we were reading in the Torah, right? And also, we should be careful to notice the different kinds of Shava. Shava are the two little dots, one on top of each other. So there are two kinds of Shava. One is silent and one is sounded or pronounced, right? A silent Shava is like this one. We would say yar, yar. Silent means that the Shava is telling you that no vowel is coming together after this R sound. It's saying no vowel is pronounced with this R after the R sound. So it's not yare, it's not yare, it's just yar. That's if it's silent Shava. But if it's a pronounced Shava, then we would say yare, yare. So there are two ways of pronouncing Shava. Our example here of the two ways is yar and yare. There are rules for that. We will learn it over time. We will slowly learn this with our reading of the Torah. Okay. So the main point is read the Hebrew as carefully as you can, but don't drive yourself crazy. Okay. Let's continue. Next paragraph.
Even don't miss one letter and don't add one letter. That is the word.
Correct. Correct.
Clearly, yeah.
But
Yeah,
notice
thank
it. Notice, even if we
Yeah.
make these mistakes, you still fulfill the obligation. But we
Okay.
don't want to be haphazard with it. We want to be careful. Right.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we destroy the Hebrew language.
Yes, sir.
All right. This paragraph. Therefore, who wants to read? Mi רוצה לקרוא.
Therefore,
Bechavod, please go ahead.
therefore, one must pass between two words in which the first word ends with the same letter with which the second word begins. For example, when reading Bakol Levavka, Deuteronomy
Bekol.
6:5. Bekol Levavka, one should pass slightly between Bekol and Levavka.
Right?
One
Because one ends with an L and the next one starts with an L. So we don't want to blend the L's like it's just one.
One should act similarly in the cases of Ba Avadatem Mehera. Deuteronomy 11:70 and Hakanaf Betil.
Beautiful.
Numbers 15:38. One must also pronounce distinctly the Jain of Zikeru.
All right. And
Numbers
the reason it's saying this is because some people have the habit of not making a difference between Z, like the word zebra, and S, like the word snack or snake. So it's saying, make sure you pronounce Z as a Z and S as a S, right? I know some Indian languages have that difficulty also, but it's not only in India, it's all over the world. A lot of people have, don't carefully distinguish. So it's saying, make sure you pronounce the letters correctly.
one should sufficiently elongate the dalet in Ekhat, Deuteronomy 6:4, in order to proclaim God's sovereignty over the heaven and the earth and all four directions. The Keth in Het, Ibit, should not be shortened so that the word sounds like a Ekhat.
All right. So if it gets shortened and it says ihad, that would actually mean the opposite of ahad. Ihad means without oneness.
Without oneness.
Right? So sometimes if we mispronounce words, we can even make it say the opposite of what it's supposed to say. All right. And when it says elongate the dalid, in modern Hebrew, we're talking about modern Hebrew, the way it's normally spoken in Israel. They make no difference between a dalid without a dagesh and a dalid with a dagesh. I'm looking for an example with a dagesh. Here. Here's a dalid with a dagesh, and where is one without a dagesh? Here's one without a dagesh. So the dagesh is the dot inside of it. So modern Hebrew pronounces both of these the same way as a D, like the word dog. But in proper Hebrew, which is very neglected, even in Israel, most people they're not careful with it. If there's a dot inside of the dalid, it's a D, like the word dog. If there's no dot in the dalid, it's a th sound, like in the word they or them or though. Although I ate this morning, I'm still hungry. So a dalid with no dot is the. With a dot is da. So it's saying elongate the dalid in ahad. So ahad, we're not just going to say ahad, we're going to say ahad, and they want us to elongate the sound in this word, in order to have enough time to think about that we're accepting God's kingship, that God is king. He is the highest authority in the heavens and the earth and in all directions. All right? So I think this is a good place to stop. Afterwards, try to remind me in our chats, and I might send you the video that I made a few days ago, and you can hear me doing this. So it's an example that I already made. And see what we mean by elongating the dalid in ahad. All right, so that concludes the laws of Shema for this week. Let's go into hilchot de'ot, the laws of character traits. This is the most important aspect of our serving God by interacting with fellow man, with other humans. All right, who wants to read the introduction? Hilchot De'ot. Both of these, the laws of Shema and Hilchot De'ot, they're both found in the Mishneh Torah of the Rambam. Hello, hello.
Shall I?
Yes, please, b'chavod. Tizku mitzvot.
They contain 11 mitzvot, 5 positive commandments and 6 negative commandments. They are to emulate his way, to cling to those who knows him, to love one fellow Jew, to love the converts, not to hate one Jew brethren, to rebuke, not to embrace, not to oppress the unfortunate, not to gossip, not to take revenge, not to bear a grudge. The explanation of these mitzvot is found in the following chapters.
Okay. All right, let's give an opportunity for someone else to read, and if everybody fell asleep, you can go ahead and read it. Anyone else awake?
Each and every man possesses many characters, many character traits. Traits. Each trait is very different and distant from the others. One type of man is worthful. He is constantly angry. In contrast, there is the claim individual
calm.
Calm.
He's relaxed.
Yes, silent.
Yeah, like he might talk, but he's not angry. He's not sad. He's just peaceful. That's calm.
There is the calm individual who is never moved to anger, or if at all, he will be slightly angry, perhaps once during a period of several years.
Okay, anyone else? I know that some of you guys are shy because I used to be shy too till I lived in Israel and they forced me to not be shy. But if there's anyone who can read and is just shy, this is an opportunity to overcome the shyness. It's easier to learn when you actually interact with learning, when you read. So is there anyone who has not read yet who is able to read?
Oh, David bhai, chadu.
And Habai Shan Lomed. It's difficult to learn when you're very shy.
The and the one is exceptionally humble. There is the man ruled by his appetite. He will never be satisfied, pursuing his desires, and conversely, the very pure of heart, who does not desire even the little that the body needs. There is the greedy man who cannot be satisfied with all the money in the world. Yes.
Ecclesiastes. That's a book in the Hebrew Bible. in Tanakh. Yes.
What's that?
Ecclesiastes is just the name of one of the books in the Hebrew Bible. It's about to quote.
It is in the Tanakh?
Yeah, it's in Tanakh. It's called in Hebrew Kohelet.
Means?
It actually means, it's very interesting that you ask. So I don't know about in Indian languages, but in English, most of the translations of the Bible.
Telugu Paramagitalu. Adena? Excuse me?
Go ahead.
Sharita? Someone is there. Telugu Paramagitalu in the Bible.
Okay. How would you translate that to English? I'm just curious. What does
same,
that literally mean in English?
He is telling that the songs of songs.
The what?
After the Psalms, there is a Proverbs. There is the Proverbs, then expressions. That means.
Does this word have a meaning in Telugu, or is just
Paramagitamulo? Paramagitamulo.
Okay, so the name of this word, it actually comes from the same word in Greek. This English word for the name of the book comes actually from Greek. The same word that in the New Testament, Christians in English, they translate it as church. But it kind of exposes translation bias in English Christian Bibles. They created a difference between the New Testament and the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, by translating this Greek word in the New Testament, ecclesia, as church. But if you look in the ancient Greek translation of Tanakh, of the Hebrew Bible, you will see that that same word that they translate as church in the New Testament, it appears all over Tanakh in the ancient Greek translation of Tanakh. And that's actually part of the name of this book of the Bible. And what that word means
we
is...
call in Telugu, I am sorry to say that we are calling in Telugu Prasangi.
Prasangi?
Prasangi.
Yes,
what is
I
Telugu
said
word
that.
Prasangi?
Is that the word for church or for this book?
No, in the book name. In the book name in Telugu, Prasangi.
Okay, Prasangi. Does that have a meaning? Does that word have a meaning?
Yeah, we have in Telugu meaning. Prasangi means preacher.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's close. That's close to the actual meaning. So ecclesia, the Greek word that this is related to, it's usually translated as church in English.
Yeah.
But it really means to call out, like a group that's called out. So it can be either an assembly, it can be an assembly like a congregation, or it can be like a preacher, somebody who calls out the word.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Prasangi. Yeah,
well, that's
thank
so
you.
cool.
Prasangi.
So you're, how did you say it? Talingi?
Prasangi.
Tasangi.
P-R-A-S-A-N.
Trasangi.
P-R-A,
Prasangi. Prasangi.
Yeah, Prasangi. Yeah.
So it's awesome to hear that your word for this book is more of an actual translation than the word they use in English.
The Telugu language is similar to Hebrew and Greek, sir. It's very close to them.
Okay, well that's awesome.
Telugu wording. Yes,
that's
sir.
awesome. All
Thank
right.
you.
So whoever was reading, you can continue reading. Sorry for the interruption.
Please.
I love to learn, so thank you for teaching me.
We both.
That's the best.
Yeah.
They say you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
What a shame.
Okay. I'm not sure who was reading earlier, but you can continue if you'd like.
A lover of money never has ill of money. In contrast, there is the man who puts a check on himself. He is satisfied with even a little, which is not enough for his needs, and he does not bother to pursue and attain what he lacks. The Mr. who torments himself with hunger, gathering his positions close to himself whenever he spends a penny of his own. He does so with great pain. Conversely, there is the
Spendthrift. Somebody who spends all their money easily.
Okay.
They throw their money away.
Okay. Who consistently wastes the entire
fortune. That's his money. So he's knowingly throwing his money away, wasting his entire fortune.
All other traits follow the same pattern of contrast. For example, the overly elated and the depressive, the string and the free-handed, the cruel and the soft-hearted, the coward and the rash, and the like.
All right. Halakha number 2. We'll do this one and then we will open up the floor for questions.
Between each trait and the contrasting trait at the other extreme, there are intermediate points, each distant from the other. With regard to all the traits, a man has some from the beginning of this conception in accordance with his bodily nature. Some are appropriate to a person's nature and will therefore be acquired more easily than other traits. Some traits he does not have from birth. He may have learned them from others or turned to them on his own. This may have come as a result of his own thoughts or because he heard that this was a proper trait for him, which he ought to attain. Therefore, he accustomed himself to it until it became a part of himself.
All right. That was beautiful. So next week we will continue with halakha number 3. If you guys want, you can look at these laws on the Chabad website. You just do a search for Mishneh Torah. You go to Sefer Mada and then De'ot. All right. Sefer Mada means book of knowledge. De'ot means character traits or mindsets. All right. So that basically concludes for today. If anybody has any questions about anything, now's the time to ask. About any topic or anything we learned. Or anything else.
When we are saying the Shema, why we cover the eyes with our hand, the right hand only?
Beautiful question. I will answer honestly. I have never investigated this question, and I have no doubt that there's a lot written about it. I'm sure that there's a lot written about it, probably a whole lot, because it's something very clear that we see everybody doing. What I can tell you, though, that's also very interesting, is that covering our eyes when we say Shema, on the one hand, it's something that Jews everywhere do. Jews in Yemen did it, Jews in India did it, Jews in Europe did it, right? But you're going to see, if you keep this in mind, your question, if you keep that question in mind while we're learning the laws of Shema, you're going to see that the Rambam never talks about it. So I never investigated it, but because the Rambam never mentions it, I'm thinking it's probably not even in the Talmud. I don't ever remember seeing it. So it's because every Jewish community seems to have a tradition of doing it. It seems like it's probably a very ancient tradition, but not in the Talmud. And that means it's not technically required. So it's not really a halakha, but it is definitely a very strong minhag. It's a very strong custom. Now, I admitted that I never looked into it, but I can say that I like the idea because it's kind of like when we are reciting the first line of Shema, which is the most famous line, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord Adonai, Hashem is our God. Hashem is one." When we're saying this most important verse, that even in early, like, we're not Christian, but I mention it because it shows how significant it is. Even in early Christianity, maybe even before they were really Christians, in the Gospels, even Jesus, when he was asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" It's quoted in a few different Gospels, but in one of them, he starts off by quoting the Shema. So I like the idea because it's like, it shows how important this verse is, this concept is, of accepting God's kingship in our life and recognizing that he is only one. He's not more than one. And so we do something that we don't do any other time in the Jewish faith. We cover our eyes. So we're blocking out all other distractions. We're only focusing on Hashem and nothing else. And it's also kind of saying, when I'm declaring God's kingship, I'm also acknowledging that I don't bow down to any idol. I don't worship any created thing. So we're covering our eyes, saying that God is not a male, God is not a female, God has no form. We're not looking at any image when we're proclaiming his kingship and accepting his sovereignty. So that's the way I always looked at it. If you investigate it online, maybe you can tell us next week some of the things you've discovered about it. But yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you for
Thank you.
wonderful answering, wonderful coding. Thank you, so.
My pleasure. Did anybody have any other questions? It can be about anything. How do you grow tomatoes in Andhra Pradesh? How do you grow peppers in oh my goodness, Tamil Nadu?
How do you grow in your country? Same as like we grow the tomatoes and potatoes, like same.
Probably it depends on where. Like if you live in a very high altitude, like Denver, Colorado, you have to protect your tomatoes from the sun. In most places, tomatoes love good sunlight. But if you're at very high altitude, the sunlight is too strong and it can burn the leaves of the tomato. So it depends on where you live.
Rabbi Joseph, if you don't mind, I'm sorry to ask you.
Sure.
Please, can you give clarity about the tithe, which is in Christian collecting tithe?
I didn't understand what you just asked. Can I clarify about the what?
Every church, they are collecting tithes in the worldwide.
There are collecting types?
Tithe means the part of tenth. Each month earning or daily wages or yearly something, how much you earning yourself, you have to give God tithe from that.
Tithes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So your question is in general or something specific about tithing?
It's not specific, it's general. Asking why those Christians are worldwide connecting tithes. Our Jew, that means our people collecting the same in Israel or in US synagogues, they are collecting tithes.
That's your question, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, number one, even though I don't endorse Christianity, Christianity has made a lot of problems, but at the same time, most Christians are sincere people. They're not bad people.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to understand the world the best they can. Most people are very, very busy. They don't have time to study for themselves. So they just trust whatever their preacher or priest says. So any criticism I give for them, I'm not attacking them as an individual. When it comes to tithing, so in the Bible, when God commanded tithing, he only commanded this to give to the temple and the priests in Israel, specifically connected to the temple, the central temple. We only had one temple.
Yes, sir.
So there is no direct command by God to give tithing to churches There's
Yeah.
also no direct command by God to give tithing to a synagogue or to anything other than what it says in the Torah.
Yes, sir.
But this does not mean that you cannot give a tithe to a church or a synagogue. You can, but if you do, it should be, it's really more of an offering because you're not obligated to give it. But you can
Okay.
give an offering of 1/10, which is technically a tithe. You can do that. There's no sin in that, as long as you're not neglecting actual obligations. Like you've already provided enough money for your family to give them food. You never want to give more money than you're able to give. You don't want to endanger yourself. If you have enough money for yourself, for your family, and if we had a temple, you could donate the tithe. You should donate it to the temple, but we don't have a temple. So then there's a question. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Right now, Jew, we don't have a temple.
Correct.
At present. Yeah.
All right. So
that is what
I can only give you my opinion. And really, if you ask any other rabbi or teacher, if they tell you something that you cannot find in the Torah, you can't find it anywhere in Tanakh or in the Gemara, in the Talmudic literature, if they're telling you that their opinion is what you have to accept, I hope you find a different teacher. A good teacher will admit when it's an opinion. So this is my opinion.
Okay, sir.
No, every community, excuse me, every community, we need funding to operate, but it does not have to be a tithe. However, I think it's a good idea to learn from the concepts of the temple. It's a good idea, and apply that to your local congregation. You don't have to, and if you don't do it, you're not sinning. You're not violating God's will. Give what you can, and I think giving 1/10, a tithe, I think it's a good idea, and I think it makes sense. But personally, I think that a better idea, even better than that, is that the local community will decide together. They will have a meeting and they will decide how much money, what percentage of money are we going to commit to donate to our community, to our synagogue, all right?
Yes.
They should not give it as a command from God, right? But they can decide by a commitment. They can commit. We're going to all give at least 5%. If you want to give more, you can give 6%. You can give 20%. But we're all going to go ahead.
Yes, sir. That is up to us.
Yes, but you're allowed to make a decision about that. You can say, if you want to have voting rights, we're going to make a committee, like a community council to make decisions. It's a good idea to make a community council. I think it's very logical and practical. So you can say, if you want to join and pray with us, you don't have to give a tithe. You don't have to donate at all. But if you want to be on our council, on our community like court, to make these decisions with our community, then you need to commit to donate at least a certain percentage, and you guys can decide that for yourself. My personal opinion is that's the best thing to do. And if you have enough money to take care of your own community, basic needs, then I think it's also a great idea to maybe donate another 1/5 to some kind of international Jewish effort, like the Temple Institute in Jerusalem or something like that. It could be anything. But I think it's really in the spirit of the Torah that if we have the ability to donate 1/10 to a international Jewish effort to revive the Jewish people, to revive giving charity and also education for the entire Jewish people. I think if we
Sadaqah. It calls sadaqah, sir?
Sadaqah is a general term, any kind of charity. That's a general term. But I think if all the Jewish people, all the congregations, or most of them, would donate as a community 10% together so that all Jews everywhere are donating to one or two different organizations, I think that could really help to revive the Jewish people and see to the restoration of the temple.
Yes, sir.
I think that would be a great thing, and that's really in the spirit of what it says in the Torah. So even though the temple doesn't exist now, if we would donate 10% toward the effort of rebuilding the temple, I think that is the closest to fulfilling the commandment that we can get.
Yes, sir.
That's a very good question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you from your side clarity. Very good, sir. Thank you. I'm happy.
My pleasure. All right. So if anybody have any other questions about anything? All right. So if we don't have any other questions, let's say yeah, maybe if someone has a question but they don't want to try English, they don't feel comfortable in English, they can tell someone in translate.
Please. వెరీ గుడ్ వెరీ గుడ్ అంటే మీ నుంచి ఆన్సర్ లేకపోతే అందరం సైలెంట్ గా ఉన్నాం మీరు మాట్లాడితే మాకు ఉద్యమం వస్తుంది ఎందుకంటే సిమ్కా చెప్పండి సార్
ఆయన సిమ్కా కాదు
సింహ సింహ ఆదిది గారా నేను ఆది గారు అనుకుంటున్నాను సుప్రియ గారు ఓకే ప్లీజ్
యూసఫ్ బాయ్ బ్రదర్
yes ma'am
what I heard about the 10%, it is in the temple when the people gave the 10% of what they gain, it goes to the temple work and for the Kohen.
Correct.
To the feed of the Kohen.
Correct.
So nowadays there is no temple and there is no Kohen.
Correct.
That's why we don't need to give the 10% to the to any person.
Correct. It's not an obligation, and if you voluntarily choose because you want to give 10% to some organization, to some charity or your local synagogue, you can do that, and you are fulfilling a mitzvah, but you're not really fulfilling the mitzvah of tithe. You're fulfilling a mitzvah of strengthening Torah and giving charity to people, and that's also a good thing. But we should not imagine. Go ahead.
If we have a wish to give some help, we can give, but that is not the 10%.
Correct. And you can give 10%, but you're not obligated to. And also, if you choose to give 10%, it's not fulfilling the Torah obligation. It's just fulfilling a general obligation of charity.
Only the 10% goes to the temple work and to the Kohen only.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Now the time is for Arvid. We are going for Arvid in the June. So thank you for your class.
Oh, and, my pleasure. Tizkula mitzvot.
Tizkula lasot.
All right, you can leave. Whoever wants to leave may leave. I'm going to say this blessing after our leaving the digital Beit Midrash. All right. Modeh ani lefonecha Adonai Elohai shesamto halqi miyosheve Beit HaMidrash ולא שמתו חלקי מיושבי קרונות שאני משכים והם משכימים אני משכים לדברי תורה והם משכימים לדבורים בטלים אני עמל והם עמלים אני עمل مقبل سخر وهم عملين وإن مقبلين سخر أنا روس وهم روسين أنا روس لحيه علم هبا روسين لبئر شاح. We are grateful before you. I'm grateful before you, Adonai, my God, that you placed my portion among those who dwell in the houses of study, and you've not placed my portion among those who just simply hang out on the street corners. I arise early and they arise early. I arise early to your words of Torah and they arise early to empty things. I work hard and they work hard. I work hard and I receive reward. They work hard and they don't receive a reward. I run and they run. I run to everlasting life. And sadly, they're running to a pit of destruction. But it's a mitzvah, it's a command of God, that we who love God will share his love with others. So,
Amen.
Hashem yavarech etchem, God bless you, v'yasem lechem shalom, and give you
Amen.
peace. Shalom uvracha, Shabbat shalom.
Amen.
Shalom,
Shabbat
shalom
shalom.
alaikum.
Amen.
Shalom
Amen.
alaikum.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom uvracha.